Founding of the Republic, Part 1, The Oath. If you have any questions, please leave them in a comment below. So, after the removal of the last king of Rome, we have the founding of the Republic. And the man who is given the credit for doing so is this man here, Lucius Junius Brutus. He's a major player in the formation of the Republic, in the early Republic, and he is given the responsibility for having expelled the last king, who had been his uncle, by marriage, from the throne after the suicide of Lucrezia, who we will go into about who she is in a second. Which, after the expulsion of Tarquinius, ends the Roman monarchy. Now, what exactly happened? So, in essence, it was an aristocratic coup. So, Lucrezia, who was a noblewoman, had her husband, that of Lucius Tarquinius Collatinus, basically had the prince over for a dinner party, Sextus Tarquinius. And Collatinus is basically bragging about how wonderful his wife is, how dutiful and a loyal wife she is. And so Sextus decides to break into their house in the middle of the night and test Lucrezia on whether she's actually as chaste and proper of a Roman woman as she had been proclaimed to be. And so he basically breaks into her bed at night, has a knife to her neck, and says, either you're going to let me have my way with you or you're going to die. And so he rapes her. Upon the next morning, when he has escaped, and Lucrezia tells her husband and her father that this has happened to her, her husband, with her father Spurius Lucretius Tripacinus, basically start calling together the major, most important people in Rome, including Brutus, as well as their friend Publius Valerius Publicola. And they basically start discussing, it's like, there's no way we can let this go without being punished. And basically decide to just get rid of the monarchy. It's like, if the monarchs are able to do these types of things and feel like they can get away with them, then we do not need monarchs in Rome. And while they're doing this discussion, Lucrezia is said to have left and committed suicide for the shame of having been defiled in such a way. Now, when it comes to our modern understanding of these traumatic types of situations, the Roman storytelling leads in a way to caricaturize Lucrezia and doesn't let her be a full person in any real way. And this is very sadly common among a lot of our Roman storytelling, as the men are considered the ones that are the most important aspects of the story. And so it is quite rare for a woman to be shown in a more fleshed out light as a fully realized person. So we can extrapolate from this story the possible mental state, as well as the idea of what exactly the kind of perpetrators or the perpetuators of this story are trying to get across, is the idea of this is what a virtuous woman, of a Roman woman, should do, or how she's expected to act in such horrible situations. As sadly the commonality of the thought process of the ancient world is that when violence is done to women, it is women's fault for that happening to them. And the only way to basically absolve themselves of almost the crime of having that happen to them, they usually have to suffer some sort of penance. And in this case, it was Lucrezia taking her own life, which suicide in the ancient world was seen as a noble act most of the time, not a sad thing as what we would think of it now. So this inflames the group, and then it as well as is used as a tool to inflame the people of Rome against the monarchy for the fact that this had happened to this virtuous woman, and she had taken her life because of it. And this is what leads to the expulsion of the Tarquinius family from the city. Now, the thing is that at the moment when this occurs, the king himself is actually absent from the city. He's conducting a war against a rival city-state called Ardea. And so, upon hearing about the news from his banished family members being expelled from the city, he immediately leaves the army in the midst of the campaign and rushes back to Rome in the hopes of being able to stave off this coup. The problem is this was a short-sighted move, and that Brutus, as the crafter of the kind of movement to oust the king, realizes that this is probably going to be how he acts. And so, knowing that the king is going to hear this news and immediately rush back to the city, he actually goes and meets the army, who is in the midst of battle. And so when Tarquin arrives back at the city of Rome, the doors are locked to him, and he's unable to actually enter into the city, and is basically informed there formally of his banishment. While at the same time, Brutus has now met the Roman army and tells them of the atrocity, and the army actually ends up joining the coup. And so the king is now out an army to try to reclaim his throne, as well as out of a throne. And this basically is the first incident in the actual ending of the monarchy. The king will make several attempts to try to reclaim his throne, but in vain. Now, this leads into the way that the Romans try to solidify political power around the new idea of a new Roman system, one void of monarchy. And so Brutus basically gathers all the people of Rome and basically has them all swear that they will never allow a king to rule over Rome ever again, and that if anybody attempts to put a king on the throne or restore the monarchy, they shall be met with immediate death. Now, for our kind of modern understanding, we might think swearing an oath, it's like, oh, that's like a legal kind of procedure. When we think about swearing an oath in a courtroom or under perjury or something along those lines. In the ancient world, it is much more serious, because who are you swearing the oath to? You're not swearing the oath to the state. You're not swearing the oath to your fellow citizens. You're swearing the oath to the gods. And so this comes into how we've talked about the religious kind of mindset of the Romans, and that the idea that you're swearing an oath to the gods means that if you break this oath, you're not just doing some harm to yourself, you're doing harm to your entire community and bringing the wrath of the gods down upon you and your community. And so it's an extra level of severity that goes along with this swearing of this oath than just what we might just think of in a more legal sense. So, with this swearing this oath, it starts to breed a kind of conspiratorial mindset amongst the people, trying to, whenever you have moments of revolutionary fervor within groups, it usually leads to a closing of ranks, a judging of who is actually with our movement, who is the most fervently along with it. If you know anything about the French Revolution, you probably understand the ideas of the Reign of Terror and the like, where the revolution turns on itself. And we see a small kind of aspect of this here in Rome as well, where the people become very suspicious of the Tarquin family. And so they basically, not just the king and his son is banished, and the royal family, anybody cousins-wise and the like that are associated are also removed. Brutus, being married into the family, is excluded from that, but his one of the new leaders of Rome, his co-consul, that of Lucrezia's wife, Lucius Tarquinius Collatinus, he ends up being also rejected from Rome. Also among lines of some suspicious behavior where he doesn't want to outright expel his own family members from the city as well. And so he ends up being swept up in that and removed as well. And he is replaced by the friend of the group, that of Publius Valerius Publicola. So this is a shift where we have a solidifying of what it is now meaning to be this new government. And that's what leads into the idea of the consuls. But we'll go into more detail about that once we get through how much more kind of important it is to kind of solidify what this new kind of system and government means. Because, as I said before, the king is not going to just sit by and let his throne be taken from him. And so, with the kind of help of members of the Tarquin family who have now been expelled from the city, they send ambassadors back to the Senate, who are now the de facto rulers of the city, and basically plead to them saying, can we at least have our personal effects, their clothes and their combs and personal items along those lines, because all those things had basically been seized in the coup. They were basically just outright thrown out of the city. And so as they're petitioning, the Senate starts to wonder, it's like, maybe we were too harsh. Maybe we should allow these people to have at least some things. It's like, we've taken their homes and the palaces and all the like. But it's like, maybe we were too hasty in our kind of just a removal of these people from the city. The thing is that these different ambassadors are actually going throughout the city and trying to find supporters of the monarchy in the hopes of riling up a conspiracy to overthrow this new government. And what ends up happening is that the conspiracy ends up being quite widespread. There are quite a few senators who are implicated in this, as well as members close to the consul Brutus himself. His wife's brothers, that of the Vitelli family, are implicated, as well as Brutus's sons, that of Titus Junius Brutus and Tiberius Junius Brutus. And this whole plot is exposed by one of the slaves of the Vitelli family, who basically overhears the conversations and grabs some letters showing evidence of what they were planning on doing, and turns them over to the consuls, who immediately try to protect this slave and root out these conspirators, seizing the ambassadors and other co-conspirators and expelling them from the city as well. And it is for this that this slave actually is granted his freedom. So there is a number of different things that end up happening. The ultimate consequences of this, though, for those people who are Roman citizens, is the fact that because they have sworn this oath, and these individuals have broken this oath, they are now doomed to death. So this includes Brutus's sons. Now you might wonder, would Brutus, as a father, actually go through with actually executing his own sons? Or would he have a moment where he decides to try to relent on this oath? And that is not the case, as he ends up executing his own sons. And so this is the first of a few attempts that Tarquinius tries to use to basically reclaim his throne. Because he is of Etruscan origin, he goes to other Etruscan city-states, people of his own kind, and he's able to persuade at least 3 different groups to come and try to help him restore the throne, and some other powerful individuals. But what ends up happening is that each of these attempts fail. There is a battle that does ensue, the Battle of Silvia Arcia, and in this midst of this battle, the Romans are victorious and defeat this Etruscan coalition, but Brutus himself falls in the midst of battle, and Publicola returns back to Rome as a victor and has a military parade to celebrate this victory. But as part of that military parade, he honors Brutus for his ultimate sacrifice. Now, this is where Publicola gets the name Publicola, which literally means the people's friend. From his actions to where he saves Vitellius, the Vitelli slave, as well as his actions in helping form the Republic and giving honor to Brutus, the people recognize him with this spurious name, this title. And we'll get into more into the ideas of how Roman names work in a later video. So that is the end of part 1. If you need to go back to the previous lecture, you can see that video here. Or if you're ready for the next one, here's the next part 2. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below.